The Play Action podcast is fueled by Picasso's Pizza, where every night is pizza night.
The Bills had a solid plan of attack, getting all sorts of guys on the offense involved against the Raiders. We'll talk about what that means for the rest of the season.
The Bills' defense is moving up in class over the next 3 weeks in terms of the receiving talent they're going to face. We'll talk about how sustainable the Bills' defensive success looks.
And now the Bills head down to face the Washington Commanders this weekend. We'll talk about different things we're going to watch for in that matchup. The Play Action podcast starts now.
The Bills had 9 different guys catch passes in their rout of the Raiders last week. Let's look forward a little bit, Catherine, and what does this say about their arsenal right now, and where they see this going forward as far as their attack goes?
Yeah, I thought they looked really good against the Raiders, which bodes well for what they're trying to do the rest of the season. They've talked so much about how, got to spread the ball around, but also that opens up so many things for other guys. Reggie Gilliam's getting involved, running backs are catching passes. I thought their run game in general, we can talk about that as well, looked good the way they used different guys' skill sets. But, Ken Dorsey mentioned how this is what this team needs, is to get more guys involved and to do it early on in the season. I think is a really healthy sign of what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I think one thing we've seen so far, obviously there was so much talk going into the season, the middle of the field, the possession passing game, the easy button, can they execute these marches? And so, that I think is a problem for defensive coordinators going forward. Okay, we're going to make you march, and the Bills marched so well that they held the ball for 74 plays against the Raiders. So, Dalton Kincaid hasn't made any highlight reel plays yet, but catching 4 passes and 5 passes, he really has, in my view, had a big effect on the offense. And I also like the fact that, we talked about run after catch, how it was poor, the pad. They've been trying to make it better and really haven't been able to the previous 2 years. And, I think Josh Allen's ability to hit James Cook quickly, Brady-like, that was one of the underappreciated things about Tom Brady. He would read the coverage and quickly hit that check down to the backs so they could get maximum yardage. And James Cook had 4 catches for 36 yards. And, he's really a dangerous run after the catch person. So I think that they need to keep doing that more. We want more of that.
Yeah, he mentioned that ability for them to march down the field. I think that drive to start the second half was a great indication of kind of what we're talking about. They had it for about 9 minutes. If I'm counting up right now, 6 different guys caught passes from Josh Allen, run games involved. There weren't necessarily like huge chunk plays on that drive, but they just kind of kept the ball, kept going. It ended with that 2-yard touchdown to Gabe Davis, which what a catch by him. I think, just seeing some of those plays all coming together to take time off the clock, to ultimately score, but to kind of showcase like, hey, we can do this slowly and methodically and, crush a team that way as well, I think is important. They still want to have those fun highlight reel plays you mentioned, obviously, but ultimately just kind of slowly crushing the Raiders on that drive. Good sign for things to come.
Yeah, and I think, obviously they had completed 31 passes overall. You can't get much. You're not going to get many more than that. And Josh Allen is completing 70. He's, I think, leading the league in completion percentage right now, 74.5 or 6%. Are they good enough at their third receiver position? I still think that's an open question. That's why it was good to see Khalil Shakir catch an 11-yard touchdown pass. That was his first target of the season and first catch of the season. Shakir, Sherfield are their third wide receiver. Now, of course, we can't discount Kincaid being a slot receiver, so to speak. So, we want to continue to see what can they get out of Shakir, the three-headed Shakir, Sherfield, Hardy. Be interesting to watch.
Now, against the Raiders, we also saw a really strong showing from the Bills' defense. Mark, what were some of your takeaways of what they were able to do and some things you're still watching for?
Well, I'll focus first on the defensive line. Now, keeping in mind the offense was so good, the defense only played 39 plays. So it's upward arrow so far on the defensive line. Certainly, Greg Rousseau, number one, has had a great start to the season, and that really is encouraging. Ed Oliver has had a really strong 2 games. That's encouraging. Daquan Jones, they shut down the Raiders' run game. Leonard Floyd, arrow up. Now, Floyd tweaked his ankle. I still think that, we're waiting. We'll see when Von Miller's out for the first 4 games, and certainly who knows if he's going to come back week 5. But even if he does, he's not. They're going to all their MO, their history suggests they're going to really gradually ease him in. So it's still on Leonard Floyd, AJ Epinesa, Shaq Lawson to carry the pass rushing load. Floyd, if he is hindered, I still think it's a little bit of a concern. Do the Bills have enough pass rush on the other side of Rousseau? It'll be a good thing to watch this week because really the next 2 weeks, because both Washington and Miami have functional offensive lines, but no superstars, no elite players on the Washington line. And really, Teron Armstead, the left tackle Miami, is a superstar. But other than that, functional but not great players on the Miami offensive line.
You mentioned Ed Oliver with a strong start to the season. He had a good start to the game. He had that tackle for loss right away. Eventually, the team held Josh Jacobs to -2 yards. Not something I was predicting going in, but what I found was interesting was kind of the rest of the drive. The Raiders moved downfield so effectively. They scored on that opening drive, all these chunk plays, but then the Bills defense bounced back. That was the only touchdown of the day for the Raiders. Eric Washington was telling us earlier this week how guys on the sideline were immediately like, that's not our defense. Here's what we're fixing. Here's how we look better. And, I was impressed the rest of the game. They had 3 takeaways. That Matt Milano interception, I can't stop watching it. I think just the way he did it was ridiculous in the most positive way. But getting so many guys involved, I think it's interesting, too, to continue to see Terrell Bernard's development. He had an interception of his own. Daquan Jones had the pressure. Greg Rousseau batted the ball. Bernard intercepted it. So just great all-around defense on that play. But, 2 games in, he's really taking on so much at that middle linebacker role, and with the communication, with everything. I think he's done a solid job so far.
Yeah, and I think looking forward, the next couple games, it's not. I mean, while Washington is a 3-wide offense essentially, that's the strength. They're 3 receivers. They're not a smash mouth offense. So at least this week, Bernard's speed brings his strength is bringing the speed to the position. So I don't think Washington is, has the MO necessarily that they're going to just power up and smash the ball, smash mouth against the Bills. And really, Miami is a different animal. And really, Jacksonville is a 3-wide offense too. So, and then the other new guy, Christian Beneford, the Raiders aren't great at wide receiver. So really the next couple weeks, the next 3 weeks, Washington, super wide receiver core, Miami, all-world, all-universe wide receiving core, and Jacksonville, really good 3 wide receivers. We're going to get a better handle on Benford over these next 3 weeks.
Yeah, I think that's something to watch moving forward for sure is just how does the secondary hold up against these guys when, the game plan going in here, AJ Epinesa was telling me was to shut down the Raiders run game. He was saying how, they do every now and then know that people think that the run defense is an area of struggle for this Bills defense. And so it felt kind of like a statement there to play the way they played on Sunday against the Raiders. So now moving forward, just kind of given the teams they're going to face, it'll be some slightly different things to watch for.
And I thought Benford, going back to Benford for a second, again, the Raiders, after Devontae Adams, don't have elite players like Washington does at receiver, 1, 2, 3 positions. But Benford, part of his MO is really good ball skills. And then that long pass, which might have been pass interference, but he did show good ball skills. He looked back for the ball, which saved him, from getting the penalty on that deep ball where he was beaten, he recovered, he did look back. Kind of got a knack for that, but like I said, we'll see the next 3 weeks because it's the challenge gets tougher for the Bills cornerbacks the next 3 weeks. The Bills face a really impressive roster of quarterbacks this season. However, as it turns out, to start the season, they faced Zach Wilson in week 1, Jimmy Garoppolo, the ultimate game manager, in week 2, and now Sam Howell of the Washington Commanders. Katherine, what do you think? How worried should they be about Sam Howell?
Yeah, I mean, I got to watch a little more of his college ball than usual since I'm a North Carolina grad. So it's been interesting seeing that transition where in college, ran kind of a simple offense, but now he's throwing this nice deep ball. He's able to be mobile in the pocket, but I think still just kind of, to your point, the quarterbacks are going to face all season long. He hasn't quite reached that level yet, to put it very diplomatically. So I think there's a big opportunity here this week for the Bills.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, in North Carolina, they ran RPOs and deep balls. Now, having said that, the Washington has talent. I mean, you look at this wide receiver core, Curtis Samuel, Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson. That's Samuel runs 4.31, McLaurin 4.35, Dotson 4.43. That's legit. That's a good prep for next week when they face the Olympic track squad of the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, it's interesting how kind of those 2 games go back to back and what the Bills can pull from this one, obviously, while still focusing fully on just the task at hand, playing the Commanders, but kind of how some of those trends will leak into the next week when they get their first meeting of the year against the Dolphins. Again, I don't think they're overlooking the Commanders when I say that, more just for us to pick apart from where we're sitting. But yeah, it's interesting. Washington as a whole, they have been somewhat of a laughingstock of the NFL for a while, just based off all their problems off the field as well. Switched ownership this offseason, so it's a bit of a new era in that sense. Some come from behind wins early to start the season. I know it's such a small sample size, but it does seem just like a very different overall franchise than we've seen recently. Again, part of that being kind of the off the field stuff going on around this team, but it's interesting just to see that transition.
Yeah, I mean, as you suggested, it's come from behind wins over Arizona and Denver. They're going up in class in opponents this week against the Bills, and the Bills are going up in class with the Commanders' defensive line. 4 number 1 draft picks on the defensive line. The Bills actually played the Commanders in 2021 in Buffalo, and I remember Deron Payne, their star defensive tackle, who's making, I'm pretty sure, more than $20 million a year. now. He wasn't then, but the Bills routed the Washington football team that day. But Payne was a superstar. He had 11 pressures, and that game, people might not remember, was the swan song for Cody Ford, because after the wrecking job of Daron Payne, Cody Ford was out of the lineup. That was his last start, or as a game as an official starter for the Bills, because then they moved Spencer Brown into the starting lineup the next week. So Daron Payne is legit. And so is Chase Young back from injury, and so is Montez Sweat, their defensive end, who will go against Spencer Brown this week.
Just to dive a little deeper in that, Mark, I know you're writing some about that this week, but how do you think some of those matchups might play out for the Bills?
I mean, I think it's that's a really legit, tough matchup for the Bills. The Bills are going to have a plan to give extra help. It is, can they run the ball as well as they ran it against the Raiders? And it might not be as easy with two really good, better interior defensive tackles in Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen. But I think there are opportunities in the pass game. So I like the matchup for the Bills passing game. I like the middle of the field this week. The Bills can attack the middle of the field. I like Kincaid. I like Kincaid 5 or more catches for sure this week.
Something I'm interested to see across both teams is a third down defense, where the Commanders have been really successful at that. They're kind of on pace for what they were last year when they were ranked number 1 third down defense. With 31.9% allowed. Right now they're at 30.8. So beating that mark, I'll bet, early. Versus we saw some of the struggles on the Bills with the Bills' third down defense pop up again. I don't think it's a huge problem for Buffalo, but I think it's still kind of interesting to watch how that'll play out for both sides there. It's obviously not directly against each other, but just a theme to keep an eye on.
Yeah, absolutely. That is really maybe one of the big matchups to watch. Third down, because the Bills are top 5 third down offense, each of the last 3 years, and we're good against the Raiders. So, can they keep in third and manageable? If so, I like them to attack the secondary. If not, third and longs are going to be a problem against this Washington front four.
We'll be watching all of that, writing about it as well. So make sure you're following all of our coverage on buffalonews.com and subscribing here to wherever you get your podcasts to keep listening.
Treat your team to the most flavorful pizza on game day at Picasso's Pizza. 4 great Western New York locations: Williamsville, West Seneca, Lancaster, and Blaisdell. Picasso's. We are Buffalo's Pizza since 1980. Order online today at picassospizza.net.